Good morning. We are here. We're back. We are back.
Here. Yes, we are here. We are back. It's a Thursday. It's January 19th. The year. It's 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast. And this is episode 652.
It is, man. 6:52 on a Thursday in 23.
Is it still gloomy and gross where you are?
Yep.
Yeah, same here today.
Can't it just snow, man? It's just,
I know.
I just really want
just
some
give
snow.
us a little bit of something.
It was sleeting when I left Del Boca Vista last night. I'm like, here it comes. Here it comes. And I woke up and It's just brown and cloudy and whatever. But I'm not letting that get to me. I'm not.
Better not after our pre-show meeting.
Yeah.
You better not be letting it. What you got yesterday must have been what I got this morning, because I thought yesterday we got torrential downpour yesterday. I went and walked Waffles early. I had a towel waiting by the door. Thought for sure I was going to get rained on. Nothing. Rain didn't hit till like 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then this morning, I don't even look at the weather. And went to take a little run with Waffs and got my headlamp on, get all geared up. About, 3 minutes out the door, pouring sleet. And I've got my headlamp on. If you ever ran in like the sleet or snow or rain, it's kind of hard to see with the headlamp on, because it like the sleet like going through, it's just causes like some friction in your eyesight. And but yeah, I got sleeted on the entire time. Windy and gross. It's a typical. It's good for you, man. It was out there.
I was gonna say you're lucky, man.
I know I am lucky. I was able to do. There's nobody out there, zero. But a lot of that I think is also because, I live in straight suburbia, and I've talked about the coyotes on, before, that we see sometimes that are just fat and just slow and totally uninterested in humans and most dogs. But I live in, suburbia, so there's always panic. And I think it was over the weekend, a poor woman posted on the neighborhood Facebook page that she had seen a wolf. Yes, we had seen there were wolves around, and she was gently brought back down to common sense earth, and noted that wolves haven't been around these parts for a couple hundred years, and they were just in fact large overfed coyotes. So that might also be why it's such a quiet, peaceful morning, because it's pitch black, and I like it. There's nobody else around. There's nothing to kind of take your distraction. It's just me and the dog, and a little bit of rain and sleet and snow or sunshine, or nice cool mornings. But it makes you feel alive.
Yeah, I went up to I ran Sunday at the ice trail up in the famous ice trail that goes through Wisconsin. And I got done and I came back. I was at the cottage, and my mom's neighbor came by, and he's like, "Oh, you like it up there?" I go, "Yeah, I do." Did you see any bear? That's where they see the bear. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Why you gotta say? Yeah, why you gotta say that?
He'd say mountain lion. What would be up there? Like some kind of cat. I was like, ugh. I didn't know. I didn't see any.
Lynx, some bobcat.
Yeah, when we drive through there, that's
what do you see up here? No, I haven't seen any up here in a couple hundred years, but they've been here before. Yeah. And then that's all you think about, right? We used to live in Chattanooga. There was,
I know.
They're like, "Oh, this is can anyone identify this species?" And you're like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, it looks like bear." And you're like, right in the middle of a trail, we like regularly run. Wasn't that that was the rattlesnake day that you and I
ran. That guy.
Yeah, we got the rattlesnake warning, and you and I usually ride shoulder to shoulder, run shoulder to shoulder, and we chit chat a little bit and go with the flow. But after that rattlesnake comment, there's a rattlesnake up there, like a rattlesnake, snakes sit still and wait for you to strike, wait to strike in the middle of trails. And like I said, we usually run side by side, but after that comment, you drop back about 5 or 6 feet right behind me. There was no, I'll take the bullet for you, I'll take the bite. It was more like, you go on ahead. I'm just doing my thing today, and we'll see how things go. You put me out there to scare off the rattlesnakes, which I wouldn't have scared off.
Divide and conquer, man. You gotta divide and conquer.
Is that what it was? Divide and conquer. You were going to save me if I got bit. We can't both go down, so you were going to be there to save the day, right? Put me over your shoulder, carry me back to civilization, and save my life. Yeah,
but the whole time I kept thinking the snake wouldn't maybe catch you until it's too late, and then he would turn and look right at me and say,
he would turn in frustration and go after you. But I
just there's another one coming.
I knew you had me, right? If I went down that day, Oregon Trail style, you would have had like a C26 tourniquet wrapped around my leg, and I'd have been safe.
Yeah.
You suck the blood and the venom out, and
Suck the
I'd have been
venom
good
out
to
of your
go.
calf. I was kind of reviewing that in my head. I'm like, do I remember how to do this shit?
Do I remember how to tourniquet? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't want to lose 3 days going over the river. We hope you haven't lost too much of your time in the start to our podcast, because we do talk about triathlon. But your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. It's not very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race previews and also a lot of race recaps. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at their very first 5K or sprint, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to the world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also frequently utilize our Facebook group, like we will today. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Amazing group, fantastic people, pretty solid resource. Again, it's got a lot of different varying ages and abilities and experiences in there that are always willing to lend a hand. So don't be a lurker, participate. It really is an outstanding community in a sport that can be overwhelming at times. You are sure to find someone that's, along a parallel journey that you are in. We all have our differences, but there are a lot of similarities. We all like to feel very special and different, but at the heart of it, we're about 95% the same. We just deal with things differently and go through things at different times. So utilize that group, and we'll do that today as we'll do a little bit of a Q&A, try to get as many questions answered as we can. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Parallel journeys. I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of people on parallel journeys. And I guess you got a topic. It's the questions, right? We got a lot of questions. Why don't you just go ahead and shoot them out there?
Well, before I shoot them out there.
Okay.
I would like to recognize and the opportunities that we have to support the podcast and C26 in general. The best way to do that is to go to our website, click on the gear tab, and purchase some gear for yourself. Take part in that. That is the best way to support us outside of giving us a solid rating on iTunes, or just frankly sharing the episode with friends that are interested in triathlon. Or, if you've listened for a long time, we're not just a triathlon podcast. Like we get comments and stuff all the time about people who don't even listen to or don't do triathlon that listen. Like my realtor listens to us now. And she'll send me, hey, great episode back and whatever. I'm like, you listen to our podcast? She's like, yeah, this got great, kind of life advice. So those are honestly the two best ways to share it, or excuse me, to share what we're doing and the podcast and the community, but also to support us. We love the fact that we have no sponsors and we don't shove ads down your throat for the first 15 minutes or do any kind of commercial break. So we always want to keep it that way. So support us through doing a little bit of shopping and buying some gear or just sharing the episode and giving us a ring. That is the best way to support us so we can keep supporting you.
Very nicely done. Did you get chewed up by the boss?
We suck, basically.
We do, man. So low key on everything.
Yeah, it's just not my style or yours to do. Like every time I get asked I've got, 1,000 business cards. They're all in the box. Like everybody's like, hey, I'll go be out somewhere. Like, do you have a business card? I'm like, yeah, don't have any on me. We're just not good at it. But I appreciate that about us. That's not our thing, but we're trying to get better because, not really just for us, but, a lot of you like to support us. So we want to give you the opportunity to do it. But without further ado, the questions from the masses, from those that do support us and do listen. The first one from Randy Matthews. Looks like he might be local. I am working on my first sprint try in the end of February. I am doing all the training on my own, no coach. I'll be 54-year-old the week prior. I have only been a cyclist for 2+ years and did not start lap swimming until November of 22, but I'm already averaging 157 100-yard pace. All right. First off, don't tell people that because they're going to get mad because you seem like you got kind of a natural ability to swim. Like I know a lot of people have been working hard for that for 4 or 5 years. So maybe edit that out too. I have worked tirelessly to drop my pace to 157 or excuse me, a minute 57. Question is, how important or beneficial would coaching be for me when I go from the sprint to the Olympic distance, and then parentheses, Casey Tri, May 2023. I'll let you take this one. Ooh. And if Randy, hope to see you at that race as well.
Well, I'm glad you asked because well, for me, the whole thing with coaching too, especially as a beginner, is like saving a lot of time, man. I know a lot of people that kind of go through all the information. There's a lot of information out there, and you can dig around and find it. And a lot of times it's good to learn through example. I think taking your first sprint under your wing is a good idea, and just kind of going for it. In fact, I've been spending the last few weeks building what we're calling sort of a developmental program, which is focused on sprint and Olympic, and it's going to be kind of a, I don't want to say inclusive, but yeah, an all-inclusive plan for a sprint and or an Olympic, where I'm putting in weekly sort of videos that kind of explain what's going on for the week and everything like that. So we are developing a plan for the Olympic. Maybe that's a good idea for your next step. But I also think coaching, if you decide you want to keep going, I think there's a lot of things that a coach can help you with, and a lot of it's saving time and not making mistakes and making sure you're going in the right direction, things like that. But like I said, I mean, we're going to have probably in the next couple of weeks putting this out there. We can, you can kind of check it out and look and see what's up there with the Olympic plan and what all comes with it. And we got some other cool ideas that we're working with to try and really help people that are just getting started. Because, man, I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that I think are lost. They're trying to, especially me, getting into an age bracket where things can go really bad in a hurry if you're not trying something new. And I think that, honestly, for me, triathlon worked. It sort of turned my life around back right about my age of 50. And I just want to make it, I'm really interested in making triathlon sort of accessible and pleasurable for people as a way to kind of get their body back and mind back in shape. So to answer your question, yeah, I think a coach is always great. We are looking for other opportunities for you, but I think having someone like a mentor to kind of help you, guide you along the way is a good plan, especially early on. I mean, I had you, luckily. I had to happen to meet you, and it was the weirdest kind of connection ever, but it really saved me a lot of time.
Well, I mean, if this, I think this thread is a perfect example. Like we do this once a month, and there's 31 questions in here. Mm-hmm. The sport is confusing. There's always something to ask, and I'll just use an analogy used about swimming a lot. Is it a lot easier for me as a coach, like if I'm on the deck or when we have them in this pool, if I'm working with an athlete who has very little experience in swimming, it's very, very easy for me to teach them the correct thing to do versus an athlete who's been taught incorrectly, by someone else or picked up bad habits along the way by self-coaching. It's a lot harder to teach someone new things and also get them to unlearn, right, and unteach things versus just to go raw. And I think that's the best example I can give you. So, regardless of where you are, in your athlete life cycle, again, there's 31 comments, there's so much information. Things are always changing. I've been around for 15 years and it's always changing. There's always questions to be answered, always. So that's really the best thing is to have someone kind of guide you along the way and kind of go along the journey with you and move kind of cobwebs, obstacles, rattlesnakes out of the way to make sure that you're successful. Lisa Prawn, it's been a hot minute since I trained for a marathon in 2018. Since then, it has been all try all the time. In the past, when I've marathon trained, it's 5+ days of running, and this bod is not going to take that kind of load, nor do I want to. Looking for ideas to still integrate a decent amount of swimming and cycling into my training while still doing enough to run a kick-ass marathon. Bonus if I can also pop in in a couple local tries of a summer for funsies. Thanks so much. Excellent question. Lisa, we do this every year, almost every few months. We just had an athlete the last 2 months run, which I don't recommend, but they ran ran a marathon this month and a marathon last month. Both were PRs and both were Boston qualifying times. And this last one was lowering it with 80, I would call it 80% triathlon training, with an additional long run and maybe a different added run during the week. It's a lot safer for most people. And then Tommy, one of our athletes, has been with us for 4 years. He did the same. He hadn't raced a 2018. It says hadn't done a marathon since 2018. We did mostly triathlon training with some longer runs, and he PR'd his one in March of last year, and got his BQ as well. So I would just say, in terms of 5+ days of running, that's a lot for a lot of people, especially if you don't run the right way or you're running too hard. Sprinkle in some hard bikes, and sprinkle in a swim or two. But yeah, I would honestly, I keep the Monday through Sunday training pretty much the same. The only things I will change sometimes are the run on Sunday is a little bit longer, and then I may just remove, because a lot of athletes will ride Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. I'll remove the Saturday ride and replace another run with it. Or if I don't do that, then I'll make the Saturday the long run, and then Sunday will be like an easy recovery spin, and then the middle of the week, Wednesday, will be kind of a harder, longer tempo run. But there's a lot of ways to accumulate the stress and fatigue and adaptations you need to be successful at the marathon distance. And I would just focus on being well-rounded and very, very fit. And we've said this a lot of times on the podcast before, but a very, very fast and fit and strong 70.3 athlete is usually in really awesome shape to just blast out a marathon. And that's been like the key to success for a lot of our athletes and qualifying for Boston. We're definitely not special, but we do it a lot differently than I think a lot of athletes would train for Boston. Is we never train by, like, if your Boston qualifying pace is, 740, we don't train by pace. Even when training for like a time-based qualification standard like Boston is, you do the same. You train by effort and effort and time. We don't do distance. We don't do time, thresholds. We just blend it all together. And so I think if you're trying to, like you said, you don't want to be beat up, and you're trying to, take care of your body and still be able to do things, hop in the usual or the local tri for, as you quote, funsies, then spread it out a little bit. But you can definitely still run a kick-ass marathon. There's no question in my mind you can still do that.
And I couldn't agree more. I think the thing about, running all the time, I think you got to be like, I don't know. I personally have never really had much interest in a standalone marathon. They kind of scare me from just, I don't know, my
pain
body
standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, but because you think about it in terms of like, I just think that this is one of those bridges that we need to think about a little bit. And I wonder if, like you just always thought like, hey, I'm training for a marathon. When you're growing up, you'd see people running and they just run like every day, all the time. And I think a lot of people get frail. Like I only have one, for a half marathon, for example, I was training for a 70.3. I think it was, whenever that was, back in Nashville. And I don't know if you remember this, but we all just like jumped in like a week before or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that I was training for 70.3 and just sort of jumped in. It was probably middle of the season, or I was probably 2 months or a month and a half away from the 70.3. And I jumped in that half marathon, and it's still my PR. And I think that this crossroads of sort of like this cross training and so many other things, like for me right now, I'm building my run up. I think it's important to kind of, do mobility and do all kinds of different stuff like that. And I think I've always thought cycling is a great supplement to running. And I always train, like I'm always doing that. People are dropping half marathons or whatever during the season. Obviously, if they're training for a full and I don't want them doing a marathon too close to the full anyway. So, but for me, it's like you run hard, and then like you're saying, you mix in some heavy, some harder bikes with it, and then, some easy bikes, and just keep the legs going. I just think that's all great shit. And I think swimming is super underrated for running anyway. So for me, it's just like you're saying, man, almost like just, for a marathon, yeah, like you're saying, you probably need to do a little bit more running and some longer stuff. But for the most part, any other kind of run race, I just think it's great to just drop it right in the middle.
You're seeing a lot of big time marathoners and ultra racers start to include cycling and swimming into their programs. I've read a lot of articles on that the past few months. So yeah, it's definitely possible, Lisa. So get out there and get after it. Caleb, I want to be the best cyclist I can be. Closer to race day, I feel like I have to stay inside to hit the bike sessions. No variance in train or anything. I can just focus on nailing the number and working. However, I do think if I were to do all these sessions outside, I will become a better athlete and cyclist. The dilemma comes from the terrain where I live. It's extremely undulating and quite difficult at times to keep wattage consistent unless I'm climbing or hitting a flat. Should I focus on getting outside and doing the sessions to the best of my ability, or am I leaving a watts on the table potentially? I think the answer is to get outside whenever possible and to try, but it's not always feasible on a work day to ride 30, 40 minutes to make sure I can hit a climb longer than 6 minutes. How can you pull out when I'm asking? How can you pull out when I'm asking here? Thanks for everything, Coach. I work with Caleb, so you're already a pretty freaking amazing cyclist. There's a right time for everything. There's a right time to put in more effort to go and make that journey outside than there is, this time of year. This time of year, save that energy, save that time. Knock it out. This time of year. Do your hard sessions inside and take your easy ones out. Hop on a gravel bike, hop on a mountain bike, fat, whatever it is, and get outside until you're still working on your handling. But then as the season goes longer, try to get inside a little bit more to do your intensity. Again, intervals don't have to be perfect. Like, so if you, I tried to save this stat. I think I was on a walk or something and I forgot to take notes, but there was a podcast I was listening to about cycling, and they basically took how much time is lost from handling over the course of just like a 40K, and it was minutes. So if you think about, like, if you used, software programs like Best Bike Split, to look at, how much faster you would be if you're doing 220 watts versus like 210, so a 10 watt gain over 70.3, that's going to get you like a, depending on your weight, obviously, but for a guy like me, it's like, a low 220s, high 2 teens. The difference in 210 and 220 is like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. But the time you can save and the energy you can save by being a better bike handler, by being an athlete that's better at timing and shifting gears, right? Or not dropping your chain because you don't know when to switch gears because you switch too late because you ride your bike inside too much, or you use ERG. I mean, these are things that there are the easiest time savings are to learn how to handle your bike, corner correctly, descend correctly, get up and over hills, correctly, to not surge, right? To not in huge power. And in terms of intervals and stuff, I mean, as long as you're staying within the intent, that's a good thing, and it's one or two workouts is not going to ruin. Let me just say this, not in the weeks leading up to your 70.3, you do 6 workouts outside and they're all 6-year interval sessions. You don't nail the numbers completely and they're like, 10 or 5 watts, lower. The missed adaptation and response that you don't get will be in seconds versus the time you might lose in minutes by being a shitty bike handler and not knowing how to corner and all the things I just said before. So get out and do them outside. Obviously, it's also a time crunch, right? So, if you have to get it in, get it in. But if you can, get outside. It's always, especially in the last like 4 to 6 weeks, get out there and your body, everybody knows from their first like outdoor ride of the year how sore you are in the upper body and how much higher effort it is. Again, those things eat at you. So get out there and do those. But again, don't overanalyze the gigantic benefit of being inside. I mean, the best athletes in the world get outside as much as they possibly can, period. No matter where they live. It's outside. And, it's because it's real world, and I think it keeps you engaged, longer, and it's actual life, right? It's real life. So I suggest, having a good balance around that. And then again, not trying to overthink what you lose versus how much you will gain by learning how to read the road and to ride your bike.
Yeah. The riding outside, man, is like, it's uncomfortable. A lot of, it's a little more uncomfortable in some ways because it's like you're saying, it's the upper body, it's all these kind of things. And, I when I lived in Nashville, I was getting out probably a lot earlier than I will this year because I'm up here. So I've kind of learned to appreciate the trainer for what it is. And as long as you work, like you're saying, I think that's the best tactic right now is like the shorter, harder stuff. You want to just do it inside and for a lot of different reasons. But the more you're outside, I mean, think back to when we used to train together down there. We would hit the trace and, sometimes we'd have, I think it's great. You have to have interval type rides on those long rides too, where you're mixing in 20 minutes at, effort or whatever it is. But we kind of, riding the trace is a little different story because one of our things always became, let's go up these hills hard. It's sort of like, that's a skill that you can develop on a trainer, but I think when you're climbing up a hill or like, to me, it's always the sort of rollers that give me trouble when I'm not out riding a lot. I can sit there and spin up a hill but we would always just put like super effort into it. And the thing about like I haven't ridden a lot with a power meter, but for me, one of the best things was to learn how to control that. Like you're saying, keep the intent of things alive and the integrity of the workout. You gotta, if it's a long, easy ride, like work on shit like handling, man. I've talked about it before. I feel like because I was lucky enough to grow up mountain biking, that even on like a course like Wisconsin, I feel like I save a lot of time because there's a lot of corners and I know how to go into them and those types of things. If you're just used to riding on a trainer, the subconscious sort of tension that you bring out on a course, I think is pretty large. You're just kind of not used to having moving objects and shit around you, and you're always a little bit more tense. And so I think the biggest benefit to riding outside is just to get comfortable and be relaxed while you're riding, because that stuff goes a long way. That's always one of my biggest things is be relaxed. It's sort of like swimming. People, it's hard for them to relax because they're not used to being in open water, and it feels so different. I notice that when I'm running, I've been running on a treadmill a lot, and I have my reasons, but when I get outside, it's a different run. And I just think that there's something about it. I feel a lot more tense when I'm out running when I start, because I think I start a little too hard. I think that's the natural tendency is to lose your control. And I think control is another huge thing on the bike. If you don't have a good command of your cycling, and the only way to do that is to be outside a lot. Just better.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Excellent points. Excellent. Hayden Covington. I'm doing my first 70.3 in October. And since I've signed up, I've been overloaded with triathlon gear advertisements on social media. Coincidence? No, because everyone's watching. What gear is actually essential for a good day beyond the obvious, like a bike and shoes? And what are some of the things that are just nice to have? If it's your first 70.3, honestly, all I would focus on from a gear standpoint is the least amount of gear possible to legally complete the day. Run shoes, goggles, cap, bike helmet, transition belt, all these things. You don't need a fancy aero helmet. You don't need to splurge on race wheels. You don't need a transition mat that's like, 8 feet by 8 feet. You don't need it. It's your first one. Keep it small. The best purchase you can make isn't a piece of gear. The best purchase you can make is being fit on your bike correctly. That's it. Nothing else you buy will save you more time or make you more comfortable than a great bike fit. So do that. Don't go buy things. I'm not going to suggest you purchase. This is where obviously not having sponsors and ads comes in quite handy. And so no, don't just keep buying, because what happens is once you start buying, you're going to continue to think that buying more is the secret to speed. I just need more. I just need more. But if you go into your first one bare bones, and you do it well, then start to look at ways that you might be able to increase. But I rarely ever suggest anyone purchase anything, because usually it's not, unless it's something like a bike fit and you're terribly fit, right, on your bike, or you got fit and you think that it's a great fit, but it turns out to be a horrific fit. There's unfortunately not as many amazing bike fitters out there as you would imagine, which is just disappointing and frustrating. Get your local bike shop eyeballing you on the bike that you bought that just happens to be the right size for you, that just happens to be the only one in stock in their bike shop, is not a bike fit. It's a sales job. And that's just a fact. So just make sure you're fit really, really well on your bike, because being comfortable is the most important thing. I mean, it goes back to the previous comment, right? Being comfortable in open water, because you do it. You just don't swim lazily in a pool, wonder why you're so tired when you get out. Same thing goes for biking. I only bike inside. I have no idea why I can't produce the same power. My heart rate's so much higher, because you're not comfortable being on the road, right? Higher exertion, higher RPE. You got this, kind of unnoticed. But when you start tension, same thing with running. So comfort is key. So yeah, I would say if you're going to purchase anything, it's not gear. It's about increasing comfort, which to me is making sure you got the right bike fit.
Yeah. Like I don't, gear is always like one of those things. It's an external reach, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the best purchase you can make for yourself is to work on going internal and being ready to deal with what's going on out there. Because I mean, that's the thing, as I get in more and more. I used to be, I've never been a gear guy, but I would always make sure I had all this shit. And the more I race, I guess the simpler and cleaner I'm trying to keep everything. It's like I put less stuff in there. One of the things is, a lot of people like to bring all their nutrition and everything like that. But over the years, I've kind of gotten to the point, especially on the run, I used to carry that bottle. I've been slowly letting go of that thing and just kind of trusting the course. I mean, it's like, it's not like you're going on a walkabout out there. They've got support, and you got stuff for you. So for me, it's always about kind of getting mentally away from needing all the extra gear and just being a better performer, just being able to go internal versus external for your drive.
Go inside. I love it. Inside the body, that is. Mm-hmm. I totally agree, especially for your first. Like, you just don't get caught up in the purchase train. It's not the way to go. Daryl Bryan, hello. I'm competing in my first 70.3 in Oceanside on April 1st. What is the nutritional guidelines for caloric and electrolyte intake? I've heard and read various and conflicting messages. Most recently, drink every 10 minutes and nutrition every 25 minutes. Thank you both. Excellent question, and one that absolutely no one can answer, except for you when you get some sort of electrolyte, sweat test, nutritional specific advice to you. The reason you read conflicting messages is because we're all made differently. All of us. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if you're male or female. You're all made differently. From 20-year-olds to 60-year-olds, everyone is different. You have a different heart rate zones. You have different thresholds. You've got different life. You got different stresses. You got different needs. All of us have. It's all different. There is no standard. So I'm not even going to begin to touch that. And anyone that could tell you that online is guessing. And a lot of times I find ourselves in a difficult position, because while we're not, I hate the word influencers because I think it's just a horrific word, but we do have influence because of our platform, and both of us try very, very hard to be open and honest about the information that we have, and that very, very little of it is a fact to you. It's just information, and so I will never give caloric electrolyte intake or sodium levels to a specific athlete, because I'd be 100% wrong, because it's 100% based on you. So the best advice I can give you, though, is to find a reputable company that will do it for you, because no one is exactly alike. Everyone, fingerprints, snowflakes, nutritional guidelines are all different. They're all different. And if you really want to get the best out of you and your day, find what's right for you and then commit to it.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add to that. I think so much of it is, if you either go that route or you learn through experience and just pay attention. And it's so weird because a lot of people have more capability than others for various reasons. It could be something in your diet, just generally, that doesn't allow you to, utilize oxygen as well, or things like. I've just read so many things on that people almost had like basically asthma, and then they figured out something in their diet and it changed their performance. So like, there's all these things, and I've been on record, and I know this is like a bad thing to say probably, but I think that I just think that, for me, it's always been sort of a basic, I kind of trial and error. I figure out what works. I test it out in training. I kind of put myself through legitimate training tests, bro science way. But I just know that when I'm in better shape, I don't think about depending on nutrition as much. So, it always, that's kind of a controversial thing, I think, but I just know that when I train right and I'm in a great spot, because I've done that before where I haven't trained as well, and I'm just like taking shit all race, and going crazy because I'm tired and worn out. But yeah, what you said about get a test.
Get tested.
Yeah,
from Pat McSweeney, you guys have mentioned before that being in solid 70.3 shape can lend itself well to running a fast marathon in the following month or two after racing a 70.3. Could you talk a little bit more about how training volume, intensity, and distribution shift from 70.3 to more running focus in the time period between? We covered that already. In terms of the coming off of 70.3. You can shed some of the, if you're coming off it and not including it, then we talked about that as well before a few times, but I would shed, maybe go down to one swim and 2 bikes and the rest is running. But keep at least 2 rides and at least 1 swim. CJ Duncan, coming back from a running injury and wondering how long I can lay off of running before an early summer Ironman. I'm fine to walk, jog if it comes to that, but would like to give it a shot to build up run volume. Again, no idea. Everyone's layoffs are different. They're all dependent on your previous experience, your running economy, your fitness level beforehand, how well you're actually laying off running, are you a person that likes to stay injured, or get healthy? That's totally not anything that I could comment on because it's so very specific. I will tell you this, that there's never an excuse for rushing back from a running injury. Don't do it. You can swim and bike, and keep your fitness level up and then slowly build the durability back up to get to where you can run. But dude, the only advice I'll give you is don't rush it, because as long as you've ran some before, again, kind of going back to your previous experience, we talked a lot about on this cast for the amount of incredible performances you've seen at like the Ironman World Championships, Tim O'Donnell, Patrick Lange, way back in the day, tons of athletes that have come in, either won it or been first or second, that have been coming off like, bone stress fractures, right? Or sickness. And they came in really, 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 really healthy and fresh, not completely overtrained. And so that's just something to always keep on top of mind when you're considering, rushing back or not rushing back. But I heard early summer Ironman, and I heard you got plenty of time.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Of course, the injuries all vary. I don't know. It's hard to say. I would definitely do what it takes to heal. And I've been through minor injuries and things like that, and I personally believe in water running, jogging, but and I've seen a lot of people have good luck with that, and I think some of those pros you mentioned did. So I can't really comment on injuries. I want you to heal up, and you got time.
Plenty of time. Fran, I know there are How to Not Suck at Swimming podcasts, but can you go through the catch phase and hip turn for us? I don't know that I can honestly go through it any better than I have on the How to Not Suck at Swimming casts. And I'm not honestly sure what you mean by the hip turn. I know about hip drive. You might be talking about hip rotation, but yeah, I would say go back and listen to those. I've gone through that a few times. I don't know that I can do it any better. But I know we do also have videos on our online hub that talk specifically about the catch phase, what it should look like. And if you want to get into that, you can always email us. But yeah, that's best for a video. It's like trying to tell you about your run form audio, from just listening. It's like you got to see it. Swimming is one of those things you just have to see. But yeah, go back and listen to those over again, because I know I've gone through it, especially in the last two. I think the last two specifically is where I really kind of went into the catch phase and made some. And then this is mostly for kind of video wise, but I know we've done a few Zoom calls about swimming as well. That could be beneficial. So sorry, I can't be more help with that. It's just one of those really hard ones, again, to tell you to do just by listening to me speak, unfortunately.
Come on, give it a shot.
I know it's just really not like it's impossible. How about this, Fran? In the next 2 weeks, I will do a new how to not suck at swimming podcast. It's already been on my mind a lot the last few weeks. So Fran, instead of answering your question, I will dedicate an entire podcast in the next 2 weeks to how to not suck at swimming. The first thing I will discuss is how to explain the correct catch phase. How about that, Fran?
That sounds good. That I know this isn't necessarily the beginner, but I've meant to mention when I was talking about the new sprint and Olympic programs. If that's something that kind of interests you, why don't you drop me an email, CrushingIron@gmail.com, and I can give you some more information as I pull that together. But yeah, if you're just getting started or just getting back into it or whatever else, and you want some kind of a good plan for the sprint or Olympic distance, just hit me up, CrushingIron@gmail.com, and keep working on your catch.
Hit him up. Debbie. Hey, Robbie. Hey, Mike. I'm a fairly new listener to your show. I love when people call us a show, but I love it. And I'm signed up for Half Ironman September 2023, Niagara Barrelman, and Ironman Florida this year in November. I have done 4 Ironman races, but it has been a few years and I'm older, 55. I love to weight train and think it's so important, especially at my age. How do you balance cycling and running with weight training? Example, I usually run at night with a training group. Do I do leg strength the same day? In the morning, is it better to do separate days? If so, when do I recover, as I definitely need more recovery days? How do you balance easy, hard days with strength training? Any feedback would be great question. We do strength training, but I think another important piece is, what is your definition of strength training? And I would also note, just reading this, and again, this is maybe reading between the lines a little bit, not looking at your training, but if you need that much recovery, then things are probably too high and too heavy already. Because I'll be frankly honest with you, your age has very, very, very little to do with how much recovery time you need, as long as the load is appropriate. So I just be very careful if you need, when do you recover? You shouldn't need, a day of quote unquote recovery. It should look just easier, right? Most of your training should be easy. So that's just the first thing. Again, totally reading between the lines on that one. But just be very mindful of that. There's this kind of, myth. We've got a bunch of athletes in their 50s, 60s, even early 70s. We had a 50-year-old athlete, 50 plus, in Kona last year. And you don't need days, more recovery because you're older. You just need different distribution of intensity and focus. In terms of where I would put leg strength, it's very dependent on the type of strength that you're doing. But don't pair them with intensity, because leg strength for most people is intensity. So don't pair an intensive run day and then try to do, an intense leg workout, or don't do, a leg workout that's very intense and then try to do, running. I try to pair, strength with easy, so because they need to complement each other. You need to kind of loosen up with a ride after you've done it. But there's also, this thing called interference, which is if you do it too close to each other, sometimes you don't get the right adaptations and signals from your muscles. So try to, again, recognize that your lifting is an intense or a high intensity workout, maybe not from a cardio aspect, from a, I hate to use the word damage, but from a damage standpoint to your muscles, to make sure you pair it with an easy day. And just, again, going back to your comment, be very mindful if you're adding in swimming, biking, running, and weight training, that's a lot of intensity you can add. So you have to be very, 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 very careful. And just really trying to understand, again, at your age, weight training is essential and strength training is great. But if you're going to do it in the morning, right? And then you want to go run well, don't make it to where your legs are so sore that you can't run well, because then you got poor running economy, which leads to injuries. So you just have to be mindful of where you put it and how you pair it. So never try to pair kind of two conflicting things together that might take away one more from the other.
I love what you said, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We've been on point today.
Well, it's just interesting to me, like the whole heavy weight, or when you think of weights, is that heavy weights? I just think like at some point, I believe in weights as you get older, first of all, and strength work, because I think it's like massive for life. I do think that you have to be aware of that. In triathlon, like you rarely see a really good triathlete that's like super jacked. You know what I mean? It's almost like a little bit of a trade-off. So it kind of depends to me on what you're going for. I mean, I'm obviously a big Goggins fan, and he said, I want to be the guy that can go out and run 200 miles and then go in the gym and just rip it up with like the big boys. But he's still super lean, and I think he does a lot of body work, pull-ups, push-ups, things like that. And to me, the strength work, I know I talk about yoga a lot, and to me, yoga is my strength work. And body weight stuff is like, can really, you can do some body weight stuff that does, reflects doing heavy weights. To me, it's like you hold those poses and those strength poses. Try and hold like a warrior pose for a minute. That's not easy. And you know what I'm saying here? I feel like I was talking to a guy, one of my athletes the other day. He said he was swimming, and he's a self-proclaimed, not a super fast swimmer, but he said some big guy obviously got done, doing squats and, whatever. And he was just jacked. He got in the lane next to him, and he was just struggling. And my athlete was just swimming along, and the guy goes, "Man, how the fuck do you swim so fast?" And he's like, it's like half his size or whatever. He said, "I'm not like a real super strong guy, but it's sort of like a limber strong, I think, is a really good way to think about triathlon." I just think it goes, it's a fine line. I mean, you can bulk up, but I think that sort of, detracts from endurance sports a little bit. It's a balancing act, and I think you just got to pick your spots. But everything you said is perfect. It's like, because that's the thing, right? Is like when you lift. I mean, you're lifting. I mean, like, are you sore every time, or are you kind of that? It's like it seems ridiculous to be always sore and trying to train for Ironman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a load thing. I mean, again, when you add more stress, you only have one stress, but you don't have a strength training bucket, a swim bucket, a bike bucket, a run bucket, a life bucket, a professional bucket. You got one bucket, and your body literally has no idea what it's coming from. And so just be really, really careful with that. I think we're still good time wise. Doug Johnson, I like this one. At times, it sounds like the two of you may deviate a bit regarding basing decisions on evidence-based training principles versus more experimental and small N anecdotes. Do you each agree that you are different in this regard? If so, does it cause any friction in your professional partnership and friendship? And how do you handle this friction? If not, how do you pull this off?
Okay.
Listen, Mike and I, frankly, are in most areas of life are probably pretty shitty examples. We are not role models. However, I would say in this area that while we have a lot of similarities in things, we also differ wildly in other areas. And yeah, I would say our training, how I would choose to train myself, is very, very different in some ways. I think on paper, right, of how Mike chooses to train himself, right, or the way he trains, different things, different people. But that's why I think it works, right? People that end up getting married, you say opposites attract. We're very opposite in a lot of ways. And so I don't find it. I find it very interesting. I'm not saying it's a funny question because it's not a ridiculous question. I do think it's a great example that that two people that are best friends and have been running a very successful business that's grown in the last 6 years can have similar yet also very different not beliefs, but yeah, I mean, like ways to go about things, I guess is there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and we do that, and it's never been any friction in that. I think it's an acknowledgement and a respect that we both have, I'll just speak for me, that, there's a lot of ways to do things and to be successful, and no one has the exact right answer. And if they say they do, then it's almost certainly the wrong answer for you. Kind of going back to the nutritional guideline, question, the best way is the best way for you. And that also doesn't mean that anyone else that does it a different way is wrong. And I think that's just an understanding that we've frankly come to forget as a society, is to, your views and your beliefs and the way you do things might be right for you, but it also doesn't mean anyone who doesn't fit in that box or category is wrong. And that's just something, again, I think we have lost sight of. But no, I think we're a whole lot alike in some areas, and we're not alike in others. But it's never once bothered me. I actually like it because it challenges, I think, both of us to think. I know it challenges me specifically to think differently, sometimes in more holistic ways. Right? Then and I think and then my way. Not that I have a way, I think challenges you in certain areas. So I think it's a great compliment. And I don't think we'd be where we are now if we didn't complement each other's, beliefs and strengths and weaknesses like we do.
Yeah, you said that perfectly. I think we're both seekers, and we're both curious, and we're both looking, and we understand that. I mean, I think we've obviously learned a lot from each other over time, and I think those differences are really a nice compliment. I mean, recently you're sending me all these texts about cold showers and deep breathings and all these things. And I'm like, yes.
You're loving it. You're like, finally.
Man. But I do think that there's I always look for ways to do things better or differently or, be more efficient or whatever it may be. And I kind of grew up with you as a coach in this sport. And I think over time we've both learned a lot from each other. I think, and I think that is what you said about the fact that we respect that and we know that, and I think both of us realize that, we're not 100% right all the time. And this is the thing about people today, it's like 100% one way or the other. And that's just bullshit, man. And we can kind of talk about things and be open and then kind of come around and come to a sort of a mutual agreement with whatever. And that doesn't mean that just because, I just find it fun. I mean, you love to research and look into things, and I love to research and look into things, but they're kind of different things, and those things really sort of add a nice new layer on top of everything. And it's good to look at things from different perspectives. And we just have respect for each other, and that's what we've always tried to do. And it's not like my way or the highway ever. And that's just how it is. And I think that adds to the mix, and I think it's a good thing. And I think probably more people should do that.
No, you nailed it, especially with the curious piece. That's one of the things that I know that we, I know a lot of coaches, we coach a lot of coaches, and we always encourage, and I think everyone should be encouraged to never be done. Always be open to ways, right? And to, different methods and doing your research and going with the flow. And, I think it's funny because a lot of times we get, comments about, you guys, it's all feel, it's all this. And I'm like, well, it's not. It might sound like that to our athletes, but we do, myself specifically, we do a whole lot of research, and what we do is science-based, but it doesn't mean you have to deliver it that way, because that's not interesting to most people. But no, I think you nailed it. It's a really good ebb and flow, and it is. We're both very curious, and neither one of us kind of like to sit still and do things like that. So yeah, next question. We won't finish all these today, but I do want to address one, and I'll kind of jump ahead. Then we'll do the rest of these next week. The question from Rachel, what's your training philosophy on training men versus women? Sports studies have primarily been conducted on men, and the literature I've been reviewing related to training prep-based build seems genetic and doesn't mention a word about the impact of women's cycles or perimenopause. Wondering how you both coach this or things you alter when coaching women. Thanks. By the way, I found out about you guys a few months ago. I've listened to every podcast since. I'm looking forward to Ironman Wisconsin camp in a few months. We are looking forward to. Hope to see you there. Excellent question. And we get this all the time. All the time. I get it specifically a ton. Mm-hmm. I would say of our across all coaches, of the athletes that we have, 65% of them are women. I will say this, and I might get some hate mail, from this, we are all special, but there is oftentimes way too much to do about the differences between men and women in training. There are more differences between each individual than there is between males and females. That's just a fact. And it comes down to individualization. And so removing the sex of the person, it's individual. I see more differences in need between different lives and different stressors and different abilities and different thresholds and different strengths and different weaknesses that totally dwarfs any differences you would do basically training a man and a woman with the exact same life, the exact same, genetic makeup outside of the obvious differences. It's just not there. I mean, yes, there are differences in the fact that, we're made, differently, but the difference comes in just training the individual versus training the sex. Because I do think, honestly, a lot of times coaches can get swept up in thinking that, a male can handle this or a male can't handle this, or a female can handle this or a female can't handle this, based on where they are. So I would say that, it's just like, again, going back to the nutritional comment up above, it's like we're all very, very, very differently. So give you an example, give me, two men, right? One of them's 40, one of them's 28, one of them's got high testosterone at 28, one of them's got a declining testosterone at 40. One of the younger one's got no kids, a flexible job, that works remotely Monday through Friday, no injury history. And then you got the 40-year-old, right, who's older, who's got declining testosterone. He travels 4 days a week. He's got 3 kids. He's married, and his life is packed full of stress. And he's, 30 pounds overweight. The differences in training load between those two is 5,000 times percent the difference you would need to do between corresponding males and females. It's individual. And the same thing goes for women, right? You've got a female in her mid 20s or a female in her late 50s. They both need different things, not because, just because of who you are. And the biggest question you always ask women is, how willing are you as a woman? And I appreciate, I've read Stacey Sims' books, and I think there's a lot of good things in there, but I also think to an extent it makes some females feel like that it's nothing works them except for a female specific training program, which is just not true. I mean, we work with 65% of our athlete base is female. We've got high level athletes, quite a few going to Kona next year. We got, a bunch that are doing their first, we got a bunch that do marathons. So everybody, we know how to work with females, and it's about not treating them like a female. It's about treating them like the person that they are. And then also understanding that we're all very different, but also that everyone has a limit to what they're willing to share and communicate. And that's the biggest piece with all athletes, right? Are you, because I've got, 30 females at least that tell me every single time they're on their cycle or where they are within their cycle or how bad their period is or how bad this is going. I hear about it all the time, have it on the daily because they're comfortable, right? Some women are not comfortable sharing that type of it for whatever reason, aren't, same thing that goes with men. Some men and men are obviously the worst at it in terms of communicating what kind of stress they have because we're all bad, we're all tough, we got it under control. Most guys are absolutely terrible about sharing their life stresses and about what's, going to impact diminishing returns on what they're doing, right? They shouldn't be doing intensity. They should be doing easy. But they don't tell you because they're shitty communicators. Females traditionally are fantastic communicators. And you'd be shocked at the things that we hear as coaches in Training Peaks. We are, I would say we hear more than, than priests that hear on confession. 100%. We hear it all. And so it's so much of, again, going back to training the individual, we're all special. Females aren't more special than males. Males aren't more special than females. And that might hurt somebody's feelings, but it's just true. We are all individual. We all need different things. But as a coach, you can only train an athlete as well as they can communicate, right? Because even though you're a woman and you have a cycle, right? If the coach doesn't know exactly what's going on or what's going on during your cycle and you're not communicating, that doesn't matter. So you have to communicate. Again, we're all very, very different. And in the 10 plus years I've been coaching, I see way more differences in how you have to train specific people than how you train males versus females and females versus males. So again, yes, there are differences, but there are differences in everyone. I don't think anyone thinks that females are small men. And I also don't think it's, I also think we get the stones cast at all. Well, male coaches don't know what females are going through. Well, no, we don't, because we're not females, but coaches in general only know what an athlete tells them. And that goes for male and female. So again, I've got quite a few females that sync and link their when they're going through their period and that time of the month, and they'll just be brutally honest. Some of them, they don't want you to know. They don't care. Or if they're going through or they're having hot flashes, you hear about it. I mean, that's just it. But again, it's all based on communication, individualization. And everyone is special.
I don't have much to add to that, really. I do, but you're right, because it's just an open pipeline with me. It's just like everyone is different, and I'm willing to listen to everybody. I have men who communicate over the top. I have women who communicate a lot, and vice versa. It just depends, man. But your question is very valid. I think it's something to be completely aware of, but the communication is the key, and it just depends. I mean, people all go through highs and lows, and it's always good for me to know when that's going on, and we deal with it. We just work with it.
We just deal with it. We just work with it. That's our motto. That's it. We have a lot of other questions that are very solid and great questions for some of you. We'll get to those next week, we promise. And as always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of your questions as well. And again, we'll get to those. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. And it's also your best avenue to support the podcast by clicking on the gear button and finding some gear that you want to rep and support us as well. If you can't do that or don't want to do it, leave us a solid review on iTunes or just share one of your favorite episodes. And that's a great way to help grow our community. If you need anything from Mike specifically or have any questions for him, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. It was a good one.
Yeah, we can get off this cast and scream and yell at each other because of our varying differences.
Oh, I got some good stuff for you. All right.
Yeah, I got a lot of problems with you people.
All right, I guess that's it.
All right, man. See you later.
Thanks for listening.